You are watching Outnumbered. I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and joining us today, Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Pete Hegseth. He is the author of the new book, American Crusade, Our Fight to Stay Free, which is now out on the shelves, and he is outnumbered. Leslie, I'll ask you the same question. If I'm Susan Rice and I'm handing over my job, my office, everything to someone I think could be a compromised Russian agent, how in the world do you not go tell that person's boss and warn the new president of the United States, I think you're putting a Russian agent into my job?
Because at that point, that wasn't the conclusion. At that point, if you look at all of the declassified information thus far, they basically saying, look, you know, we need to be cautious. He's having a lot more conversations with Ambassador Kislyak, and we don't want sensitive information shared. We want to go by the book on this. And when the president specifically asks Comey if there is any evidence that Flynn has done anything thus far, he said, not yet, right? So she is not in a position to say that. And she's also been told by the counsel to email herself. So she's doing what she's told. And at that point, she doesn't have information to pass on to the new administration, to the new president, which would be Donald Trump at that time.
I got to ask you again, okay? If this guy's doing anything nefarious at all, you are putting a person in my job who we think there's some evidence that he might be doing something wrong with the Russians. You don't have to be convinced he's a spy. If you are suspicious enough that you think he has to be surveilled further into the administration, into your job, that's not enough to go tell the president?
I don't feel that it's Susan Rice's. I don't feel it's Susan Rice's position to do that in that type of situation. That would be a Comey situation. That would be somebody in the FBI or perhaps President Obama himself. But at that time, if you look at the declassified information, what they had is not enough for Susan Rice, and that would not be in her position to do that with the new president forthcoming.
Yeah.
An important milestone. All 50 states have now eased coronavirus restrictions in some way or another. Connecticut, the last to do so. However, it will not reopen all at once. Stores and offices have the green light, while restaurants can only serve customers outdoors. Gyms, hair salons, and movie theaters will remain closed for now. This is the DOJ is warning California and its governor. Restrictions there on religious services may be discriminatory, as the state gives the go-ahead for offices, malls, and restaurants to reopen. Saying in a letter, quote, whichever level of restrictions you adopt, these civil rights protections mandate equal treatment of persons and activities of a secular and religious nature, end quote. Former Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker weighed in.
There's no pandemic exception to the First Amendment or constitutional rights. And what I would say in this is if people of faith can go to supermarkets or get their hair cut or get a tattoo, they can also worship practicing the same types of things that they would do in their secular life.
Yeah, it's interesting, Leslie, to hear Katie say, thank God we have those things in place, because where would we be without them? What are your thoughts? You're in California. Well, let me not skip that point. This really, this really affects you. Gavin Newsom's your governor. How do you feel about the fact that a mall can open, and albeit a mall is a big place, but so are some mega churches, okay? Maybe not as big as a mall, but they're huge. How do you feel about that versus religious services?
We already had a legal challenge to that, Harris, here in California. And on May 5th, the federal court actually upheld the governor's ban. And what they stated was, quote, this move was in the interest of public health. And the reason they said that was secular places in California, such as movies, sporting events, concerts, were also shut down. When you talk about malls, you're talking about retail. You talk about purchase. Somebody is going to the curb or going into the store to purchase an item, whereas those other events, secular and religious, they are are communing. And interestingly enough, on Mother's Day, we had not one, but two churches that defied that order. In one church in Mendocino, we had a pastor who was positive, and now since at least two of his parishioners are also positive with COVID-19. And then we have in Butte County, we have a parishioner who was positive, and 180 people were at that church. So this isn't something that's going to be forever, and this is because of public health, which the governor is responsible for us here in California in our state.
President Trump urging Senate Republicans to ramp up the pressure on Democrats as election season kicks into high gear, and referencing his claims that there was an effort by Obama officials to sabotage his presidency. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso attended that closed-door meeting where the president made the comments yesterday.
There was a very positive meeting focused specifically on the future. He did talk about the upcoming elections and the need for us to be strong and smart and tough in fighting the Democrats.
This as GOP senators move forward with Obama-era investigations. The Senate Homeland Security Committee, led by Ron Johnson, chairman, voting today to authorize a subpoena related to its probe into Hunter Biden and Ukrainian energy company Burisma. While Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham says he wants to release the findings of his investigation into Operation Crossfire Hurricane before the November election. Let's take those two pieces separately. And Pete, let me start with you. The idea of investigating Hunter Biden versus maybe talking about it when you're out on the campaign trail as a politician. Is it a good look to be investigating it in Congress, or does it look political? What do you think?
Well, I think you look at it, and if it deserves to be investigated, you investigate it, because if you think about the weight of what went against the president. But to the first topic as well, if there's one thing Donald Trump has taught Republicans to do and that they ought to, it is fight. For so long, Republicans explained away or apologized or, oh, why isn't the media fair to me? I wish I could get a better angle. And he said, you got to go at them harder than they come at you. You got to give them nicknames. You got to call them out for their godless, borderless socialism. Call them out for who they are and let the people decide, because otherwise the whole terrain is slanted against you on the campaign trail. So if you've got something, trust me, if they have something on a Republican, they're going to use it. So if Joe Biden has a liability with Hunter, why are we afraid to use it? That's the sort of realpolitik hardball view that Trump has taken. It has served him well so far. I think backing down and trying to equivocate is not the effective route for Republicans at any level right now.
Yeah. Leslie, what do you think about that response?
Pete, I didn't hear you say it wasn't political, because it is political. I mean, even the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, has said, look, it's very unlikely there's going to be any investigation into the former President Barack Obama or the former Vice President Joe Biden. Hunter Biden's not running last time I checked for president. Joe Biden is. Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. And you want to take down Hunter Biden so you can connect the dots and take down Joe Biden. And that's just not going to happen. So this is political. It's theater. It's a distraction, and it's typical. Both sides do it, sadly, in an election year, especially when you have the country so divided and so tight a race as we are seeing between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
With so many Americans out of work, Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas says now is not the time for illegal immigrants to be getting stimulus money. He is proposing legislation which would prevent the federal government from sending taxpayer-funded dollars to states or cities which issue payments to people in the U.S. illegally. Watch.
We shouldn't be spending hard-earned taxpayer dollars on illegal immigrants at a time when 35 million Americans are out of work. If we're going to be giving relief checks to those people who are out of work, we need to focus on American citizens, not illegal immigrants.
Senator Cotton's proposed legislation comes as California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is reportedly setting aside $75 million in coronavirus relief aid for undocumented immigrants. The program is first come, first serve and pays $500 per person, up to $1,000 per household. Leslie, why is this necessary, do you think, to give illegal immigrants cash at this point? 500 individual, 1,000, up to 1,000 per household.
Because here, Harris, and thank you for asking, here in California, we have the majority of undocumented workers in the United States, first off. Second of all, 50 to 75% of undocumented workers pay not only local, state, but federal taxes. That's over 6 million people. For the federal government to say we're going to punish an entire state for the decision of the governor of that state with regard to one population, the undocumented population, you're punishing all those other taxpayers. And remember, here in California, the largest state in this country, we pay more taxes than many states combined. And on top of that, if somebody is eating, Senator Cotton, if you're watching, if you're eating a salad, you're eating a salad that was picked, most likely, or any produce by an undocumented worker. You can't have it both ways, sir.
I just want to slide in, and I didn't mean to cut in on the diatribe that you were making there directly to Senator Cotton, in case he's watching. I am curious to know how you figure that it harms everybody else who's a taxpayer to give money to illegal immigrants because they pay taxes, you say. But how does it harm all of you other taxpayers by saying, no, we're not going to give money to people who are here illegally?
No, if you say for the federal government to say California is not going to get any bailout money, it hurts the people that are not here illegally, that are not undocumented. And again, the undocumented, what are we saying? If you're a taxpayer, you get this money. If you're undocumented and you're paying taxes, why shouldn't you get that money? That is the argument the governor has made, and that is what I'm saying, and that is what the state of California is saying to the rest of the nation.
2/3 of U.S. states are reportedly providing addresses of people who have contracted the coronavirus with first responders. And the Associated Press finding at least 10 of those are going as far as to share people's names. Supporters argue the data is necessary in order to keep frontline workers safe and help them do their jobs, but it is sparking major concerns among activists. The Tennessee Black Caucus saying in a statement, the information could actually have a chilling effect that keeps those already distrustful of the government from taking the COVID-19 test and possibly accelerate the spread of the disease. Katie, I guess they think that, people first responders might be slow to respond if a household or a neighborhood has a number of cases. First responders usually, I think, assume that anybody they come in contact with could have the virus. What do you think about this?
Yeah, the first responders I've talked to and the nurses and doctors working in hospitals on this say that they just assume everybody has it and they proceed accordingly. This idea, I agree that this will backfire because people don't want their information shared, especially health information. They don't know who else it's being shared with, and they don't want to be stigmatized for getting help with this virus. And so, I understand that maybe they want to do some contract tracing and all of that kind of thing, but given the number of people who have the virus now, that doesn't make much sense. So the idea that they're sharing names of people, I think, will backfire against them and will cause fewer people to actually go in and get help for this disease.
Yeah, Leslie, does it make sense to you?
Katie, we agree on this, and Democrats and Republicans do agree on this. You have more than 11 million people that have been tested in the United States, and when they're tested, they want the assurance that they have privacy and that their information is not going to be shared. And any first responder, anybody in the medical community on the front or even second line, my husband and others in the healthcare community, like Katie said, I agree, have to go under the assumption that everybody's positive and suit up, if you will, to be protected. And quite frankly, this is worrisome because there are those communities out there that are very vulnerable and untrusting, African Americans, Hispanics, Muslims, et cetera, minority communities that are concerned that their information will be shared with immigration or other federal entities. And it's like a scarlet letter, and it shouldn't be if somebody has COVID-19.